Welcome back to War Machines Chronicles, the channel where we uncover the incredible history of military technology. Today we're journeying back to the dawn of organized conflict to explore humanity's very first war machines. Forget about tanks and jets for a moment. We're talking about the revolutionary inventions that transformed the battlefield thousands of years ago, giving birth to the art of siegecraft and forever changing the face of war. It all started with a simple problem. How do you conquer a fortified city? Walls were the ultimate defense. They kept armies at bay for weeks, months, even years. But human ingenuity, especially when fueled by the desire for conquest, is a powerful force. The earliest solutions were brutal and straightforward. Battering rams, for instance. Imagine a massive, heavy log, sometimes tipped with bronze or iron, carried by a group of determined soldiers. They would swing it rhythmically, relentlessly against a gate or a section of wall. The sound alone must have been terrifying, a thunderous, percussive beat that signaled impending doom for those inside. Early rams were simple, unprotected tools. The men carrying them were completely exposed to arrows, rocks, and boiling oil dropped from above. It was a deadly job, but if successful, it could crack open a city's defenses. To protect these vulnerable assault teams, ancient engineers developed mobile shelters. These were essentially wooden sheds on wheels, covered with wet animal hides to protect against fire arrows. Soldiers could push the ram from inside this protective cover, a simple yet brilliant innovation that significantly increased their chances of survival and success. These shelters, known as tortoises or sows, were the ancient equivalent of armored personnel carriers. They allowed attackers to get right up to the base of the walls, not just with rams, but also with tools to undermine the foundations. Miners would dig tunnels beneath the walls, propping them up with wooden beams. Once the tunnel was complete, they would set the beams on fire, causing the tunnel to collapse and bringing a section of the wall crashing down with it. It was a slow, dangerous, and incredibly effective tactic. But what if you couldn't get close to the walls? What if you needed to attack from a distance? This is where projectile throwing machines come into play, the true artillery of the ancient world. The first of these were simple stone throwers, giant slingshots, or catapults powered by human muscle. But the real game-changer came from the ancient Greeks in the 4th century BC, the torsion engine. This was a technological leap, as significant as the invention of gunpowder, centuries later. Instead of relying on the flexibility of a wooden arm, torsion weapons used the immense power stored in tightly twisted ropes of animal sinew or hair. The two main types were the ballista and the catapult. The ballista was essentially a giant crossbow. It had two arms, each inserted into a bundle of twisted ropes. When the arms were pulled back and released, they would launch a heavy spear or a large arrow with incredible force and accuracy. They were the sniper rifles of the ancient battlefield, capable of picking off individual defenders on the battlements from hundreds of yards away. Then there was the onager, or wild ass, named for its powerful kick. This machine had a single powerful arm held down by a thick skein of twisted rope. When released, the arm would fly upwards and slam into a padded frame, launching a massive stone in a high arc. This wasn't a precision weapon like the ballista. This was area denial artillery. An onager could hurl boulders weighing over 100 pounds, smashing into rooftops, shattering battlements, and terrorizing the city's inhabitants. The psychological impact of a constant, invisible bombardment was just as important as the physical destruction. Perhaps the most visually impressive and terrifying of all ancient siege engines was the siege tower. These were monumental, multi-story wooden structures on wheels, often as tall as the city walls themselves. They were the ultimate assault platforms. Covered in protective hides and pushed by hundreds of soldiers from within, these towers were slow-moving fortresses. Inside, ladders connected the different levels, which were packed with archers and other soldiers. Once the tower reached the wall, a drawbridge would be lowered from the top level, creating a direct path for elite troops to swarm onto the battlements and open a new front in the battle. The sight of a colossal tower, bristling with armed men, inching its way towards your city walls must have been a soul-crushing experience. It was a clear statement of intent. We are coming over your walls one way or another. The masters of combining these technologies were the Assyrians and later the Romans. The Roman army turned siege warfare into a science. They wouldn't just bring one or two machines, they would deploy an entire orchestra of destruction. Legions would arrive at a target city and immediately begin constructing a massive fortified camp. Then the engineers, the Fabri, would get to work. They would build ramps leading up to the walls, construct dozens of ballistae and onagers, and assemble towering siege engines, all using resources gathered from the surrounding landscape. The siege of Masada is a legendary example of Roman determination. To conquer the fortress, which was perched atop a high, isolated plateau, Roman legions built a colossal earthen ramp nearly 400 feet high. It took thousands of men months to build, all while under fire from the defenders. Once it was complete, they rolled a single, massive siege tower with a battering ram up the ramp and breached the fortress walls. These early war machines were more than just tools of destruction. They were symbols of power, ingenuity, and the relentless drive of human ambition. They required incredible knowledge of mathematics, physics, and engineering. They demanded vast resources and a highly organized labor force. The development of these machines ran parallel to the development of civilization itself, each pushing the other forward in a cycle of innovation and conflict. They were the physical manifestation of strategic thought, allowing commanders to solve the complex puzzle of a fortified city. From the humble battering ram to the towering siege engine, these inventions laid the mechanical foundations for all future warfare. They proved that no wall was too high, no defense was impenetrable, and that with the right machine, anything could be conquered. Thank you for joining us on this journey back in time on War Machines Chronicles. The story of military technology is the story of humanity itself, a constant struggle between defense and attack. What ancient machine do you find most impressive? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive into the history of warfare. Until next time.